Hello and welcome to Spotlight. Today's guest leverages money to make more money and to create social change. Flipkart, Ola, Swiggy, Book My Show are all household names today. And these are just some of the startups that Prashant Prakash has backed as a VC. He's also a social evangelist. And I'm going to be asking him to share tips with us today about how to survive and thrive in the digital age. Welcome to the show, Prashant.
Hi, Sandhya. Nice to be here.
I'm really happy that you could make time for us today because I know there's a lot of excitement in the VC community, the startups all being very enthusiastic. So, which are the sectors that you think that growth is going to happen in?
Sandhya, two things. One is, of course, you had the first wave, and then you had a little bit of lull, and then you had the second wave. And during this period, what has changed is the real digitization of everything around us. And what that has led to is acceleration of the current companies and sectors that are already there in the digital world. They could be marketplaces, online payment businesses, online fintech businesses. All these have just accelerated. So there's just been so much tailwinds that they've actually achieved almost. They've gotten 2 years ahead in terms of where the projections were in many cases. And so the secular shift of customer behavior, maybe forced by the pandemic, has worked very well for digital businesses as a whole. So that's one part. Now, your question is, moving forward, beyond what was already happening in the digital world, what are the new sectors that are still untapped or that will start to become key sectors of growth? I think EdTech, there's just so much disruption in the education space. I don't think any one of us imagined being out of school for 2 years or being out of college for 2 years. So I think all institutions are preparing for a hybrid world. I think if you hear any projections, they believe that we got to learn to live with this virus till about at least 2023. So while vaccinations will solve a good chunk of the problems in terms of us getting into ICUs and will reduce death rates, but in just living and managing our lives in this on and off pandemic kind of situation is reality for the next 2 to 3 years. So all forms of education and college education, school education will change from the way we know it in the next 2 to 3 years. So there's a lot of activity, there's retooling, there's new models being worked out. So there's a lot of new technology and new disruption that will come into the education space. Healthcare and wellness. There's, again, many years of talk of digital health and more focus on wellness, remote consultation, AI-driven personalized health models, and so on. But I think they all will become more mainstream in the next 2 to 3 years. So there's also a lot of spend that is going to happen on health beyond just the tier 1 cities. You just saw the finance minister yesterday announce a big package for improving health at the rural and at the PHC level. So the bottom-up kind of health technologies, not just the high-end technologies in your primary hospitals in the main towns, but all the way from the bottom. So there's going to be a lot of new diagnostic technologies, new data-driven hub and spoke kind of models for remote consultation that will take root. And third, areas like insurance, right? So I think there's a lot of uncertainty in people's life. There's a lot of uncertainty in how they feel their healthcare costs will be taken care of in the future. So I think there's going to be a lot of new interest, and people will discover what's the right kind of insurance that will work for them. And hence, there's an opportunity for companies to reinvent the way insurance is being sold digitally and in a more personalized fashion. So that will be a big redefining of an industry in terms of digital and online insurance. And finally, agri-tech, a huge space. A good chunk of our population is involved in agri-tech, in the agriculture space. There is some startup activity, but still there's, with the new agri laws that have been reformed and farmers becoming more and more savvy in being able to digitally transact and find markets for their goods, not only in the local APMC market or with the brokers, but with beyond their state borders and probably even exports. So all of that will change some of the status quo and dynamics in the agri-tech ecosystem. And finally, entertainment. I think entertainment, the way we know it, will also dramatically change. So entertainment and media, I think, has already shifted significantly to the digital world. And what will the hybrid world look like? What will that modal world in retail and entertainment and media look like? I think that'll be interesting to see. And there's a lot of new opportunities. So there's digital transformation of this new kind. That there's been digital transformation happening for 20, 25 years. But this is a very new form of digital transformation that is impacting all businesses a lot more than what digital did for these sectors previously. And that would be new opportunities and new paradigms.
That actually brings me to the next question. While so many companies have been able to make this transition and have actually started making more money than they used to, there are quite a few companies that are struggling. So what would your advice be? Are there a few tips that you can give to companies that will help them survive and thrive in the digital economy?
So one big learning for us is that we need to be nimble. So way we organize our teams, the way people's roles can be more fungible and cross-disciplinary, I think is more important now than ever in most companies. You will have phases of unlock and growth and extreme expansions, and suddenly you'll have a lockdown of 3-4 months, and things will have to you'll have to rejig the way your teams are. So I think companies have learned a lot in terms of how these teams can be better organized to be more flexible for this expansion and contraction that happens. That's one part, right? So there is the operational flexibility in businesses is more important than ever. The ability to withstand shocks in your customer base, with your suppliers, with your channels, all of that becomes important. So you need to build a world of redundancy, right? So you just can't be dependent on your store in the mall anymore. You have to have an alternative. You have to be able to reach your customer. The customer still wants your product. So the consumption is not gone away, right? So in fact, people have more pent up money to spend. So you just need to reach the right customers and being able to give those products. So reimagining how your ability to service customers online. And for standardized products, it's very easy. But for lifestyle products and other products where there's a little bit of a touch and feel, this is still not solved. So still companies need to push the envelope to see how they can engage their customers with products that are not very standard and still need a lot of meetings and in person. So how do you kind of transform that, right? That's the second part. Third is building culture in this disconnected. In a sense, we are all connected but disconnected, right? It's a very funny situation that we are in. We are disconnected because we are humans are used to resyncing our relationships physically. We are used to resyncing our understanding of each other through these personal meetings now and then, every so often. And the idea of having conversations near the water cooler in your organization, the idea of having these team building meetings and retreats, all that are going to change. So but you're still a company that is bound, the vision and the mission and what you do is bound by this unified thing that is your culture, the company's culture. So how do you build that in this distributed world? It's going to be a big new challenge and still not solved. So they need to, of course, experiment and try to make the attempt. So it will be a little bit of, very careful bringing together of people in a very thoughtful manner and being able to have remote mechanisms for getting people to engage outside of work remotely and have some of those mechanisms built.
Prashant, you've also been appointed fairly recently advisor to the Chief Minister of Karnataka on strategy and policy. What are your responsibilities in this? A, and two, how will you juggle your government and corporate responsibilities?
Yeah, it's a good question and a big challenge for me also. See, I think over the last 2 to 3 years, and even previously for the last 10, 12 years, I have started to kind of blend what I do in the venture capital world and a little bit of what I can do through ACT, the Action COVID team that we started during the first wave. This was a consortium of venture funds coming together to solve large societal problems with speed and quick access to capital, which is what startups know best to do. So I think a combination of that plus my involvement with the Startup Vision Group here with Dr. Ashwath Narayan, who is the Deputy Chief Minister, I got a better flavor for where are the high leverage points where I can spend a little bit of time but create a large impact. And I thought policy and strategy is one such area. You collaborate with the bureaucracy, you collaborate with the political system, and are able to influence projects and other high impact aspects of governance without spending a lot of time in the operational aspects of this. So I'm able to do a little bit of this juggling because my intervention, even in the vision group, we don't get involved in operationalizing a lot of what we do. The idea of the vision group is to set the broad contours of what should the state be doing to further its digital economy. So I'll give you an example. It's about building new organizations. It's about building new mechanisms to institutionalize some of these thoughts. So one such thing was the creation of the Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, right? Which was an organization first of its kind in the country, where it's a majority owned by private and minority by the government. Not happened anywhere else in any state or even in the center, right? So 51% owned by private institutions like NASCOM, ASOCHAM, TAI, and then 49% owned by government of Karnataka. Now, the thought behind KDM is that the private sector is more intimately aware of what's happening in the industry. The private sector knows that the next demand in services and product is going to come from. So can they be sounding board? Can they be almost a parallel support system for the bureaucracy to be able to accelerate the adoption of digital technologies in the state and also create a better environment to attract more business into the state? And who better to drive it than the industry itself, right? Rather than the industry just advising the government sometimes. So it's better if the industry is in the driving seat and does some of it and then takes the support of the government to be able to operationalize it, because ultimately it's the government machinery that will have to operationalize some of it. But being able to set the right frameworks and being able to set the right mechanisms to operationalize some of this is very important. And that's what KDM would do. So I think the short answer is my focus will be more on creating these high leverage initiatives, which will serve just not one project, but will systemically help the state do some of these things better and be a more attractive destination. And hopefully, our goal is to be one of the first trillion state at some point in time, right? So the great thing about Karnataka is that there has always been a very, irrespective of what government is in power, there's been a very close collaboration between the industry leaders, all the way from the early Infosys, Nandan, Chris Gopalakrishna, Kiran Majumdar, and some of the newer leaders now. So, and I think that really differentiates. So it is not a disconnected thing specific to one political party being in power. So this continuity of engagement between industry and the government over these 2-3 decades has created a very new differentiated environment for collaborative decision making and great initiatives together.
Prashant, I know from my personal experience that you are very committed social evangelist. You support programs that impact education, environment, culture, gender. What got you started off in this process?
I think it was maybe a decade ago when or maybe even now 12, 14 years ago, when I met an individual, Mr. Ramurthy, who was working in the education space. And today in ACT, we are trying to do something interesting, which is, bring some of the culture and the learnings from the startup space into the philanthropic space. But how Ramurthy was influential was his view was, why aren't some of the practices that are so commonsensical and mainstream in the corporate world, why aren't some of those things not there in the NGO or the impact space, right? So I think that was a big kind of light bulb for me, right? That there is value for a new generation of philanthropy in this country. And hopefully I can make a beginning to start helping that change. And now, like I said, with ACT, I'm seeing that more and more bear fruit, where urgency, practicality, a more collective collaboration between multiple stakeholders, the leverage of tech platforms, the ability to access global capital. So all these are now becoming more real for me, but it's really been a journey of more than a decade. But it's very exciting. I consider myself also the previous generation, right, when it comes to business leaders, right? So there's the next generation of these leaders who are going to get wealth, who will get wealth to be able to contribute and meaningfully impact society. I'm seeing a lot of openness and interest in them talking about, how can societal change be done differently? How can we create these development models and these impact models differently? So very exciting time for our country. And I'm hoping, we are still among the poorest nations in the world. We still have among the worst air and environment anywhere in the world. We still have among the least penetrated health systems anywhere in the world when it comes to, like I was talking about, the rural health system. So lots to be done. And we need this to be done in a very short period of time and apply some of the same yardsticks and benchmarks when we do our corporate businesses and some of our for-profit businesses. Can we bring those mechanisms and that kind of capital and energy and talent into this world? This is my hope, and also something I look forward to be able to accelerate the changes we have to do to meaningfully have a better chance in terms of quality of life and equity across different segments in our country.
So apart from you, which are the other tech companies or VCs which are part of ACT?
So there are more than 50 different venture funds across the world which helped us raise our recent money. So I think maybe it's good to just quickly talk about what we did in the recent pandemic. We were able to, in a very short period of time, oxygen became the biggest problem. So we wanted to see what can we do to solve the oxygen problem. So we said, can we get oxygen to these tens and thousands of hospitals and clinics which were in the rural areas in this country. So we imported 45,000 plus oxygen devices from across the world in just 2 to 3 months. And we were able to, I think we were one of the largest providers of these and we provided all of them to NGOs and to the government. And that was a big area of focus for us. And the long-term solution is vaccination. So that's the big pilot we launched in Bangalore, where we created something called the Community Vaccination Coalition, which is a coming together of the BBMP, various NGOs, and the private healthcare system, because you need to be able to administer a lot of these vaccines in the form of camps. And we arrived at a priority mechanism where the most vulnerable portion of our population, the high-risk groups, and the marginalized, they get priority in the vaccination program. So this was something which we were able to work because of my relationships with the government and have the BBMP become a key partner in being able to run hundreds of camps in a very short period of time and actually create a very audacious goal for Bangalore, at least in this case, of trying to get 80-90% of our citizens to at least one dose before early August.
Fair bit of progress is already being made in it, I think.
Yes, so we are upwards of 50%, and a lot of credit will go to the BBMP and the Commissioner, Mr. Gaurav Gupta, who has put together this coalition, and the state government also for supporting this coalition.
So one last question for you, Prashant. There's a saying that people who do good end up feeling good about the good that they are doing. So
right.
All the work that you do in terms of social evangelism and empowering people, how has it impacted your well-being?
I've definitely found more purpose. I'm able to really see the world beyond what otherwise I would have seen just being in the type of corporate and the traditional startup industry. Now being able to look at social startups, being able to look at impact at the grassroots levels definitely has helped. I mean, it's both good and bad. I mean, you feel good that you're understanding the world that exists beyond what you've had exposure to. But at the same time, the enormity of the challenge in a country like India, makes you feel heavy some days, right? So that the impact that you will be able to create may still be very small, and you got to do a lot more. And that's where the idea of the collective becomes more important. You got to be that catalyst. The role of you as a catalyst is more important than ever if we have to solve some of these problems in our lifetime, and hopefully some of them in the next 30, 40 years.
Thank you so much for your time, Prashant, and more power to you in all that you do.
Thank you, Sandhya. It's always a pleasure. And I keep seeing you also experimenting, and you're an entrepreneur at heart forever. I really like that part of what you keep doing. Thank you.
Do subscribe to the Raintree Media channel on YouTube. Like, comment, and share the videos.